Hey piano people, do you remember those old school talk shows on the radio? The ones where people would like call in and ask questions and get advice? Well, that's what I want to do today. And that's actually what I want to do with you, starting as a monthly series. So welcome to the first episode of Piano Talk. This is going to be a series that I do once a month, and you can fill out a form, I will link it in the description, and ask all of your questions that you have about piano and get answers. These videos are going to be raw, unedited, and you're just going to get like my answers to your questions just as though you were to walk into my studio and sit down at the piano and ask me questions. So we're going to start today with 3 specific questions. I got a lot of them for my first call of questions, and we're just going to go in the order that they're received. And so go ahead and submit your question today if you want to get on one of the future episodes, keeping in mind that the more details you can give in your question, the better, right? So if you have a question about a specific piece, like give me the piece name, give me the composer, give me the measure number, right? Or if you have a question about a topic, make sure that you include as many relevant details as you can think of, because the more details that I have, the more comprehensive I can be with my answers. So this is going to be like basically your hotline for your hardest piano questions, okay? And I can't wait because I think this is gonna be a lot of fun. You can also comment and let me know below like what you think and how you like this series, because you know we're kind of creating this together as we go. So 3 questions. The first question is from Timothy P. And his question said, so many books on sight reading just list pieces in levels of difficulty, but don't teach specific things to look for and to practice. I watched your YouTube video of 3 tips on sight reading, which gave specific things to do. Does the rest of your sight reading course teach tools to use? So I wanted to use this question to just talk a little bit about sight reading in general, because there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of misinformation out there, and then I will show you my absolute favorite tools for sight reading and the ones that I always recommend to my students, the ones that I use, and we'll break it all down. So the first thing about sight reading is that sight reading is just when you play through a piece as well as possible on the very first try. Okay, so it's one playthrough. So when you start to like practice a piece and dive in and play it more than once, that's not sight reading anymore, that's practicing, like your piece for the long term. So sight reading is just playing a piece one time. And so I recommend that you practice sight reading. And in fact, I recommend that you practice sight reading over other things. Like if you had to choose between scales or sight reading or theory or sight reading, I would recommend sight reading every single time. And the reason is because it's kind of like a very targeted way and a very miniature way to learn a piece from the ground up and like perform it, because your goal is to play it as well as possible the very first try. And so you're going to spend some time looking at the piece and finding patterns and doing some of the things that you would do if you were going to practice the piece, but then you're also going to like play it right then and there. And so you get to experience a lot of the stages and phases that you would go through in learning a piece and performing it, but in a very condensed amount of time, because ideally you're spending like 10 minutes on this, 10 to 15 minutes, not, you know, months and months and months. So there are a couple of piano books that are really good, and like Timothy mentioned, a lot of them don't have instruction on like how to practice sight reading, but there are some good ones. So I wanted to first call out Keith Snell's sight reading books. This is level 10, but it starts at the preparatory level and goes all the way up. And so this one is great because there are a lot of examples, and at least in the beginning, there are usually like some points on how to sight read well, right? Like a few. He has like a page or 2 about how to go through the process of sight reading, which is really great. It's a very, very, very affordable option. Actually, all of the options I'm going to show you are very affordable, but that's a great one. Another one, oh, and like I said, there's like many levels, and I'll link them in the description below. I have a link that will take you to all of them. Another one is the Helen Marley and Kevin Olson books. It's called Sight Reading and Rhythm Every Day. Looks like this, but they're all different colors because this is like level book 2A. I think it starts actually like at level A, B, 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, and then like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I want to say there's 8 levels. And these ones are great because on every single, on every single unit, they give you like the things to focus on, and they do have directions on every single example. So they won't give you like the whole process of how to sight read, but they do take you through and like at least guide you a little bit. Now, I don't have one sight reading course anymore. I used to. It was called Secrets to Sight Reading. It was a great course. People got great results, but it was a lot. It was a lot of content, and it was a lot for people to get. And so after many years of selling this course and getting feedback on the course, we actually took the main teachings that we had inside that course and broke it up into a couple of different things. So for starters, let me see. We have the sight reading cheat code. And if you want to know like what Timothy was asking, like the actual things to do every single time you sit down to sight read, that's what the sight reading cheat code does. It basically it's a PDF, but it also comes with like videos explaining how to use it and such. And it's going to break down the 8 steps that you need in order to sight read with freedom and flow every single time. And the cool thing about sight reading is that regardless of the level that you're sight reading at, the process that you go through every single time you sight read is exactly the same. Right? So you can use this sight reading cheat code like literally every single time you practice. And so it's very helpful for that. I would recommend that you like print it out or download it and keep it at your piano so that every time you sight read, you make sure you're not skipping any of the steps. I do have a video. I need to be taking notes on all the videos I'm telling you that I'm giving you. I do have a video on sight reading, and I'm going to link that in the description below. I take you through the 8 steps, and I like tell you a little bit about how to do them, and then I also I'll link the sight reading cheat code in the description as well, and that way you can grab it if you want it. It's not absolutely necessary, but it will be a game changer, and because it's a lifelong tool and it's the same 8 steps that you do every time, like it's very worthwhile to have. I also have, let's see, the instant pattern decoder. And this is something, if you want to like start to be able to recognize patterns in music more, this is a little resource that I created where I took like musical examples and basically like show you exactly what they are and how to spot them in music. And so that's a good one. It's helpful to build your sight reading skills, especially like when you're going through the process of sight reading and you want to be able to recognize patterns faster. That can help. And then the last thing would be the Read Music 10 Times Faster course. So that's a great course for anyone that wants to sight read better or learn faster, just period, because it teaches you like how to practice. And I actually go through and have these practice with me videos of like notes, intervals, major and minor chords, key signatures, and rhythm patterns. And you learn how to spot them really, really quickly in music, which of course is going to help your sight reading and your learning and everything. So those are all the resources. I will link them in the description below. And those are my thoughts on sight reading. It's something that you do want to practice, but you do want to practice correctly, right? Like you want to make sure that you're practicing correctly, which is why the cheat code is so helpful. Because if you're not going through those 8 steps, or if you're just skipping straight to like trying to play through pieces and like muscle through it, it's not going to go well, and it's not going to build the proper habits. Okay, let's dive into the next question. So this question comes from JCW, and it's, how can I speed up a piece without having to play it 100,000 times? This person says they learned alla turca, the rondo alla turca by Mozart, but 100 to 104 is the fastest tempo that they can get it to before it falls apart. I have so many thoughts. I have so many thoughts on this one, and I love this question because tempo is also a topic that there's like a lot of common misconceptions. Okay, so the first thing that I want to tackle is the idea of the goal tempo, right? Like what is the tempo that you quote unquote should be playing a piece at? And I just like to remind people that tempo is very subjective. Mozart, when he was writing the rondo alla turca, didn't have a metronome. Okay, and so when he wrote Allegro, or whatever the tempo is for that piece, I don't have it in front of me, he wasn't thinking like, oh, that needs to be 132 BPMs, right? That's not how composers wrote music until more recently, because they didn't have metronomes. So every tempo suggestion that you see, like when you see Allegro and you see like, you know, suggested 132 BPMs, it's a suggestion by an editor, because Mozart didn't have a metronome. And so there's a range of tempo. And if you look at a metronome, one second, like my little penguin metronome, it has a range, right? It is gonna be hard to see because this is a really old metronome. It's seen better days. But like adagio is written on my metronome, and the metronome marking, it's like adagio is anywhere from like 56 to 84. Like that's insane. That's a very, very large range. It might be smaller than that, but like it's a big range, right? And so your maximum tempo is very subjective. And I always like to remind people that your maximum tempo should not be based off of like a number that you see on a page. Your maximum tempo should come from you listening to many different pieces, finding the tempo that you like the best, and then kind of taking the average of what is the tempo that you like the best, and also what is the highest speed that you can play the piece at and still play it with confident musical expression. And that is the tempo you should play. Okay, so I just had to give that caveat, JC. You might already know that, but I know a lot of people don't, and so I'd like to say that. Now, when it comes to speeding up a piece, without having to play it 100,000 times, there are so many things, but I'm going to tell you basically like 2 ways to do it. And I talk about this, I recently released a tempo course, and it's all about this. I talk about all of the tempo markings. I talk about how to pick a tempo. I show you how to like listen to the recordings, how to find the tempo of the pieces. I do all of this, and then I actually break down and show you like how to speed it up. It's an inexpensive course, and so I will link that in the description as well, because if you're really hung up on tempo, or like tempo is something you struggle with, it would be a very, very valuable resource for you, because you'll get everything about tempo, the common misconceptions, how to actually do it like in detail. But as much as I can explain to you in this video, when you want to speed up a piece, there's 2 ways to do it. The first way is to ensure, and this is like gonna be an annoying answer, but it's the truth. I will always tell you all the truth. I'm not gonna lie or sugarcoat it to you. The first way would be to learn a piece correctly. Right? So to make sure that you are learning with the proper milestones in the proper order. So like addressing rhythm, making sure that your rhythm is solid. Addressing fingering, making sure you're using consistent fingering. Addressing the proper articulation, the proper technique. All of those things, those like foundations need to be in place. And then the cool thing is that tempo is going to be the natural byproduct of repeated accuracy. Okay? Tempo is the natural byproduct of repeated accuracy. And so in the Confidence Roadmap, which I know a lot of you have heard of, if you haven't heard of it, it is it's the complete guide to how to learn a piece from the ground up with confident musical expression. It walks you through all of the milestones that you need to hit. There's 10 of them. And I'm going to show you. Look at where tempo is. Hopefully you can read that. Tempo is milestone 9. Tempo is milestone 9. And this is because most piano players try to address tempo way too early on in the process. We hear a piece, we fall in love with it, we want to play it, and we're like, oh my gosh, it has to go this fast. And so we rush to try to get it that fast. And in doing that, we end up making a lot of mistakes. But tempo is the byproduct of repeated accuracy. So if you're practicing accurately, and if you're following the roadmap and you address the 8 other milestones that come before tempo, what actually happens is that by the time you get to the 9th milestone, the tempo has naturally increased. You're already naturally at a faster tempo because you've practiced correctly. You've learned things in the right order, and so therefore you don't have to try to get it up to tempo. Okay, so that's one way, all right? Just make sure that you are learning correctly. Make sure you're practicing accurately so that your tempo is the natural byproduct of that. The second way is to specifically address tempo. And my favorite way to do this is to either by section or as an entire piece, start slowly and very, very, very incrementally work it up. So let's say you can play it at 50 with the metronome. You're going to then try 52, then try 54, then try 56. And let's say at 56, you start to make a bunch of mistakes. You're gonna go back down to 54. You're gonna practice at 54 until you are super solid, super easy, and then you're gonna try 56 again. And yay, this time you got 56. Now you're gonna go to 58. And yay, you got 58, so you're gonna go to 60. And let's say at 60 you make a ton of mistakes, you're gonna go back down to 58, and you're gonna practice at 58 until it feels really easy. And you're gonna basically repeat that until you get it up to tempo. It's not glamorous. There's no magic trick. In fact, the magic trick would be like the first way, right? To like learn it correctly, but that's how you would do it. And in this process, keeping in mind that there's generally like one part or a couple parts that are preventing you from going fast. So getting really clear on like what tempo can I play the whole piece at, and which parts of the piece are the parts that I can't play at that tempo, and then you can also just specifically address those parts. Like I said, I go over that in the tempo course. And the other thing about tempo is in order to be able to like think about tempo, you have to be able to use the metronome, which means you have to be able to count out loud. And so if you can't do that, then the rhythm course would also be really helpful for you. So I'll link all of that in the description. But hopefully that's helpful. I mean, that's a lot, right? But a lot of helpful ways to do it, and you can get really far if you just go try those things in your practice. Okay, question number 3. Comes from Rashida W. I feel I know my exam pieces, but I can't get through them without mistakes in random areas. It's like my hands won't do what my brain tells them. Please help. Rashida, I love this question. It's such a great question. So my first suggestion, like the very simplest answer I could give you, would be in your pieces to get clarity on which random areas you're making mistakes on. Because there's generally, I'm gonna break it down. Usually people, when people ask me this question, they think the mistakes are happening in random areas. But if you take a practice method like the post-it method, so you take some post-its and you start to practice like one measure at a time, what you'll find is that if you were to take your entire piece and go through one measure at a time, like do the first measure, okay, the first measure is good. Do the second measure, okay, the second measure is good. You're going to find that it's actually probably like 2 or 3 specific measures that are actually messing you up. So it's probably not as random as you think it is. It's probably the same few measures, but it feels random because maybe your practice feels chaotic, okay? So that's the first thing, is like try to get clarity on which measures they are. I just gave you one suggestion on how to do that, the post-it method. Another suggestion would be to just go to the places where accidentals are, where the pattern changes, so like the rhythm changes or the left-hand pattern changes, or go to the transition spots or the middle of the piece. Okay, those would be like the main red flag areas that usually mess people up. So go to those spots and try to find what the random areas are. Because I would say 95% of the time, it's not random. It's like very specific measures. Once you find those measures, you can use the confidence roadmap as a troubleshooting tool. So the confidence roadmap, if you follow all of the milestones, what's cool about it is you can also go back and say like, okay, milestone 1 is listening, milestone 2 is rhythm, milestone 3 is fingering. So go back and double check those things, right? Listen to the piece. What am I noticing in the recording that is different than how I'm playing it? And is there anything I can like shed light on by listening to the piece? Go back to the rhythm of that tricky measure that's messing you up. Is there anything rhythmically that I'm unclear on? If not, go to the fingering. Is there anything fingering wise that I'm unclear on? And in doing that process and using the roadmap to troubleshoot, you will find exactly what the issue is, okay? And so then we can take this question from, you know, I make random mistakes in random areas to I know that in measure 33, it's a rhythm issue and I need to get clarity on my rhythm. I know that in measure 27, I'm not clear on the fingering, so I need to write in new fingering. I know that on measure 4, I'm struggling with the jump in the left hand, right? And you can get a higher level of clarity, and then you can make a plan on how to address those things. So that is my number 1 suggestion. Now, for 95% of cases, that is what's going on, is it's not as random as we think. It's just we need to spend some time investigating what the actual problem is. Now, for the other 5% of cases, there can be that issue, right? Where there's like random mistakes and it's like you're learning the pieces and it goes well in practice and then it falls apart, or like random things crop up when you're nervous and you feel like you have no control. And generally, that comes from not practicing correctly, or not practicing consistently, I should say. So when you are practicing, you want to set yourself up for consistent accuracy. You can think about it this way. For every mistake you make in practice, it takes 9 times of doing it correctly to cancel out that one mistake, right? And if you just sit with that for a minute and think about like, okay, wow. So when I start my piece, half of the time I play it correctly and half of the time I don't. That 9 times 9 times 9, that adds up really fast on like how many times you need to play it correctly to counteract those mistakes. And so thinking about how can you approach your practice every single day in a way that sets you up for that consistent accuracy. And what that means is usually people need to practice in much smaller sections than they think, and they need to go much slower than they think, okay? I talk about this a lot in Piano Practice Lab, and if for those of you that have been in Piano Practice Lab, you know that, and I'm going to be creating a course about this very soon. But I would say, honestly, the confidence roadmap, and I'm not trying to sell you the confidence roadmap, but it is the tool that will fix this, because it ensures that you are practicing correctly. The way that it's designed is so that you have to prioritize consistent accuracy as a part of the learning process. And if you can do that, it will totally transform the way that you play. You won't have this issue anymore because things will be more organized in your brain. And when you have clarity in your brain, you can have clarity in your fingers. When your brain is confused, you can't have clarity in your fingers. You can't give your fingers clear directions. So I hope that is helpful, Rashida W. And for all of you watching, I really hope that you got a nugget out of this video. Please, in the comments, share with me what was like the biggest illumination or the biggest thing that you learned. I'm very curious to know. And then go follow the link and submit your questions, right? I'm gonna answer, depending on what the questions are and how long they take to answer. My plan is once a month to do these videos totally raw, just like you and me are sitting at my piano, and just like answer your questions. And so we have a little list going, and I'm sure it's gonna just keep growing, but get your question in, because the sooner you get it in, the sooner I can answer your questions, right? And I just can't wait to do more of it. It's really, really, really fun. And I love these Piano Talk episodes, so I hope that you do too. Let me know in the comments, and that way I know how to kind of like steer these episodes in the right direction to make them really work for you and to make you get as much out of it as possible. All right, everybody, happy practicing. I will see you in the next one.